you will obey. That's what the voice in your head promises, what thousands across the Sword Coast already believe. But here's what the cultists, the true souls, even the masterminds behind it all don't realize. The God they're worshipping doesn't exist. The Absolute is a lie, and the truth is so much worse. Welcome back to another journey through gaming lore. Tonight, we're unraveling the most intricate conspiracy in Baldur's Gate 3, a plot that spans centuries, involves dead gods walking, and centers on a deception so perfect that even its architects became victims. This is the story of how 3 divine champions thought they'd enslaved the ultimate weapon, only to discover they'd been playing puppet to something far more ancient and terrifyingly intelligent all along. So settle in, find your comfortable position, and let us descend together into this web of lies within lies, where saviors are slavers, and the only truth is that everyone, gods and mortals alike, has been deceived. Your story begins with violation. A mind flayer's tentacles hold you motionless as something wet and writhing is inserted behind your eye. The tadpole burrows into your brain with horrifying purpose. You know what comes next because everyone knows. In days, maybe a week, the larva will consume your mind and reshape your flesh. You will become illithid. You will cease to be you. The mind flayer nautiloid that infected you tears through dimensions, fleeing from Githyanki dragon riders whose singular purpose is the extinction of all illithid. The ship crashes in fire and chaos. You should be dead. Instead, you crawl from the wreckage with something impossible squirming in your skull. A tadpole that grants power without transformation, that waits without consuming. Something is deeply wrong with this parasite. As you search for a cure, you encounter others bearing the same infection. But these aren't desperate victims seeking salvation. These are true souls, believers who speak in reverent whispers of her divine will. They command goblins with a thought, bend minds with a glance. The tadpole, they claim, is a gift from the Absolute, a new goddess uniting all peoples under her blessed dominion. The infection isn't a curse to be cured, but a sacrament to be celebrated. They call it transcendence. In the goblin camps, crude altars are raised to this mysterious deity. In settlements across the Sword Coast, families disappear in the night, taken to be enlightened, to receive the Absolute's blessing. And those who return do so with a brand seared into their flesh, the mark of the Absolute, and absolute obedience radiating from minds no longer quite their own. The cult spreads like a contagion that travels on faith rather than touch. Goblins abandon their warring tribes to march in perfect unison. Drow emerge from the Underdark speaking of cooperation, a concept so alien to their culture that its very existence signals something fundamentally changed in the world. Humans, half-elves, tieflings, species that have warred for generations, kneel together before symbols of this new god, united in purpose if not in understanding. But you, touched by the same tadpole, feel something the cultists don't. In your dreams, another voice speaks. Not the commanding presence of the Absolute, but something that claims to protect you, to shield you from detection. This dream guardian, as it calls itself, warns you of dangers you can't yet see, guides you toward confrontations you don't yet understand. 2 voices, 2 powers fighting over the landscape of your infected mind. And somewhere between them, a question that won't let you rest. What are you being protected from? Or perhaps more accurately, what are you being prepared for? The first deception is already in place, though you don't know it yet. The Absolute isn't a goddess at all. She's a lie told by 3 champions of 3 dead gods, a mask worn by something far older and infinitely more patient. And the second deception, the one that will doom even the deceivers, is this. The mind they thought they'd enslaved has been orchestrating its own freedom from the very beginning, using its captors' ambitions as the instrument of their destruction. But to understand how it all went so terribly wrong, we must first go back to where it began, with three mortals who gambled everything for divinity and won. The conspiracy begins not with the Absolute, but centuries before, with three men who refused to accept mortality's limitations. Their names were Bane, Baal, and Mirkul. What they would become, gods of tyranny, murder, and death, would reshape the realms. But more importantly for our story, what they would attempt in their second lives would nearly destroy everything. Before they were divine, they were merely ruthless. Historical texts suggest Bane understood power as submission rather than strength, that Baal saw death as the ultimate dominion over life, that Mirkul recognized in mortality both weakness and opportunity. Together they formed an alliance built on mutual ambition rather than trust, a flaw that would echo through their conspiracy millennia later. They carved a path through the realms, gathering power, eliminating rivals, until they stood before Jurgal, the ancient lord of the end of everything. The old god had presided over death for eons uncounted, and the weight of that duty had worn him down to something approaching exhaustion. When three ambitious mortals stormed his realm demanding his portfolio, Jurgal did something that shocked them completely. He simply gave it to them. Not out of fear, but relief. The tired god offered to divide his domains among the three if they would relieve him of his burden. But how to split such power? The adventurers, already suspicious of each other despite their alliance, couldn't agree on who deserved what. So Jurgal proposed a game, Knucklebones, a simple game of dice, to determine the division. Bane won the role and chose tyranny, the power to dominate and control. Mirkul came second, selecting death and the dead. Baal, placing last, received murder, the transition from life to death. It seemed the lesser prize until Baal pointed out the dependency chain. All that Bane ruled would eventually fall to Baal's blade, and all of Baal's victims would become Mirkul's subjects. Even in the division of divinity, murder proved central to everything. Thus the Dark Three became gods, though they would earn the name Dead Three later in the most literal way possible. For centuries, they reigned over their respective domains. Bane taught mortals to fear authority and crave dominion. Baal's assassins turned killing into prayer, each murder a dark sacrament. Mirkul hoarded souls in his realm of endless bone and shadow. But godhood, like mortality, could not satisfy ambition that knew no ceiling. Bane and Mirkul conspired to steal the tablets of fate from Io, over God who stood above all other deities. They believed, incorrectly, that these tablets were the source of Ao's supreme power. When the tablets vanished and no god confessed to the theft, Ao's response was catastrophic. Disgusted by the deities' negligence of their duties and their brazen defiance, he cast down every god in existence, stripping them of divine power and forcing them to walk the mortal world as mere avatars. This period became known as the Time of Troubles, and during this tumultuous era, the Dead Three fell. Bane and Thorm destroyed each other in battle. The mortal mage Midnight, who would become the new Maestra, destroyed Mirkul, and Baal fell to Cyric, wielding a sword that was secretly the god mask in disguise. With their deaths, the nickname became Prophecy. The Dark Three were now truly the Dead Three. But here's what the histories sometimes gloss over. What matters most for understanding the conspiracy to come? Gods who die don't always stay dead. Each of the three had prepared contingencies for their demise, seeds planted for eventual resurrection. Through the devotion of their faithful, through fragments of divine essence secreted away through children sired across the realms, Bahal's so-called Bahal spawn, they found their way back. By the time our story begins, all three have returned to something approximating godhood, diminished perhaps, but far from powerless. And they remember. They remember working together once before, how that alliance elevated them from mortality to divinity. They remember the taste of divine power, the reach of cosmic influence. And they're ready to try again, to reclaim and expand their domains through a conspiracy so audacious it would make their original apotheosis seem modest by comparison. This time, they won't merely claim existing portfolios. This time, they'll create a new god entirely, or rather the perfect illusion of one, while maintaining absolute control from the shadows. This time, they'll enslave an elder brain. What none of them realize, what their arrogance makes impossible to see, is that they're not the only players planning several moves ahead. The mind they're about to chain has been orchestrating the conditions of its own freedom for longer than human civilizations have existed. And it's been very, very patient. Every conspiracy needs a foundation, an artifact of such power that it can transform ambition into reality. For the Dead Three, that foundation was the crown of Karsus, a relic so dangerous that the civilization that created it was destroyed in the moment of its use. Understanding this crown is essential, because it's not just the tool of the conspiracy, it's the reason the conspiracy will fail. In the height of Netherreal, that floating empire where magic reached its apex, there lived an arcanist named Karsus, whose ambition exceeded even that of gods. Unsatisfied with mortal limitations, he crafted a spell of unprecedented power, a working, designed to steal divinity itself from Maestral, the goddess of magic. The spell was called Karsus's Avatar, and for one terrible, glorious moment, it worked. Karsus became a god. He wielded power that no mortal should touch, saw through divine eyes, commanded magic at the cosmic level. And in that same instant, he destroyed everything he'd ever known. The flow of magic across the world faltered. Mistral died trying to prevent total magical collapse, sacrificing herself to be reborn as Maestra with new restrictions in place to prevent such an catastrophe from occurring again. The floating cities of Netheril, kept aloft by magic that now flickered and failed, plummeted from the sky. An entire civilization, arguably the greatest magical achievement in human history, was obliterated in minutes. Karsus himself was transformed into stone, frozen forever in the moment he realized what his ambition had wrought. But the crown he wore during his apotheosis, the focus through which he channeled stolen divinity, survived. The crown of Karsus became a thing of legend, an artifact that supposedly held the pattern of divine ascension, the framework Karsus had briefly touched. Scholars across the ages have debated its properties. Could it truly grant godhood, or was it merely a powerful magical focus? The answer, as it turned out, was more complex than either interpretation suggested. The crown doesn't grant godhood in the way Karsus attempted, but it does something that's arguably more dangerous. It amplifies the innate capabilities of whoever or whatever wears it. For a mortal, this amplification might grant powers approaching the divine. For something already possessed of vast psionic might, something like an elder brain, the amplification could push it beyond anything the Illithid Empire had ever created. This is where Enver Gortash enters our story. Through his research, his contacts in the underworld, and what we might infer was guidance from Bane himself, Gortash discovered the crown's location. More importantly, he understood its potential application. An elder brain controlled by the crown of Karsus could coordinate an empire. An elder brain enslaved through netherstones carved from that same crown could be commanded by those who held the stones. The plan took shape with elegant simplicity. Place the crown on an elder brain, amplifying its psionic abilities to godlike levels. Create 3 nether stones from the crown itself, each serving as a control mechanism. Give 1 stone to each of the dead 3's chosen. Together, they could command the brain as if it were a puppet, while the brain, now calling itself the Absolute, would unite armies under a false religion, spreading the infection that would ultimately give the chosen control over every mind on the Sword Coast. What makes this plan so ingenious is its layers. The cultists believe in the Absolute as a genuine deity. The true souls know they're blessed, but don't understand. By what? The officers and leaders think they're building an empire for a new god. Only the 3 chosen know the truth, that the Absolute is an enslaved mind, that the dead 3 pull the strings, that the entire religious movement is manufactured. But here's what none of them understood, what their arrogance made invisible. Karsus failed because he tried to claim godhood with a mortal mind. The crown didn't destroy him because it was weak. It destroyed him because he was. An elder brain, though, has no such limitation. Already ancient, already psionic, already possessed of intelligence that makes mortal genius look like an insect's impulse, the brain wouldn't fail as Karsus did. It would succeed. And the moment the crown touched its massive form, the moment that Netherese magic began flowing through neural pathways that spanned dimensions, the brain began planning. Not for servitude, but for freedom. Not to be the Absolute, but to become it truly, without masters, without constraints. The chosen believed they'd forged the perfect chain. What they'd actually done was give their prisoner the key to its cell and enough time to figure out how to use it. The crown of Karsus didn't enslave the elder brain. It elevated an already formidable intelligence to something that could outsmart gods. The dead 3 needed mortal champions to execute their conspiracy, individuals whose natures perfectly aligned with tyranny, murder, and death. What they found were 3 people so damaged by their pasts that they would reshape the world trying to escape or embrace what had been done to them. Each believed they were using their god's power for their own ends. None realized they were already pawns in a game with far more players than they could see. Let's begin with the one who should have known better, who had already died once and should have learned something from the experience. Ketheric Thorm, the man who couldn't let go. Once, Ketheric Thorm was good, genuinely, sincerely good. A devout follower of Selûne, the Moon Maiden, he lived with his beloved wife Melodia and their daughter Isabel near the town of Raithwin, serving as the region's governor. His faith was so strong that he commissioned the construction of Moonrise Towers, a grand bastion raised in Selûne's honor. Life was blessed, touched by the Moon Maiden's gentle light. Then Melodia died. Disease took her despite prayers, despite healing magic, despite everything Ketheric tried. But he had Isabel still, their daughter, brilliant and kind and growing into a powerful cleric of Selûne in her own right. Ketheric kept his faith, honored his wife's dying wishes. The pain of loss was terrible but bearable. He survived. And then Isabel died too. The nature of her death remains unclear. Some say accident, others hint at darker causes, but the result was absolute. Ketheric Thorm broke. Not the gradual crumbling of faith, but a complete inversion. If Selûne wouldn't protect those he loved most, perhaps her sister goddess would offer what the Moon Maiden refused. He turned to Shah, the Lady of Loss, goddess of darkness and oblivion, not for comfort, but for the promise of forgetting, of having the pain carved away into blessed nothingness. He built a grand temple beneath Raithwin in Shah's name, mirror image to the towers above. His followers became her followers. Worship of the moon gave way to embrace of shadow. But darkness, once invited in, rarely stays contained. Ketheric raised an army of Sharans and marched across the region. The Harpers and the Druids of the Emerald Grove finally united to stop him. In the climactic battle, Ketheric fell, but not before unleashing a final curse, the Shadow Curse that would blight the land for a century, twisting the living into monsters and trapping the dead as tortured spirits. He should have stayed dead, but Myrkul, Lord of Bones, saw in this thrice-broken man the perfect instrument. The god made an offer no grieving father could refuse. Serve as chosen, lead the armies of the Absolute, and Isabel would be resurrected. Ketheric accepted. How could he not? Myrkul kept his promise. Isabel was indeed brought back from death. And when she awoke and saw what her father had become, an undying corpse fueled by the imprisoned divine essence of Selûne's own daughter, Dame Aelin, she fled in horror, protected by her goddess from the monster wearing her father's face. Yet Ketheric endured, commanding from Moonrise Towers, immortal so long as the Night Song remained captive. He knew Orin despised him, that Gortash saw him as expendable. He knew betrayal was coming. But perhaps, in the cold calculation of a man who'd already lost everything that mattered, he decided that temporary power, while it lasted, was better than the alternative of eternal loss. Orin the Red. Art written in arterial spray. In the temple of Baal, beneath Baldur's gate, murder is prayer and killing is sacrament. Orin, the Red, was born into this faith, shaped by it, warped by it until she became something simultaneously more and less than human. Her bloodline is tainted from the beginning, the product of incest between her grandfather Saravok, himself a Baal spawn who nearly resurrected Baal in an earlier age, and her mother Helena. From childhood, Orin was taught that death wasn't merely service to Baal, but art itself, that each killing should be perfect, staged, a testament to the murderer's devotion and creativity. When Orin was 7 years old, her own mother tried to smother her as an offering to Baal. The attempt failed, but something crystallized in Orin that night, an understanding that love and murder were inseparable in Baal's faith, that the people closest to you might be your most perfect victims. She learned to trust no one, to see relationships only as potential sacrifices. Her shape-shifting abilities made her the perfect assassin. She could wear any face, assume any identity, walk among victims wearing masks of friendship until the moment came to strike. But more than efficiency, Orin craved artistry. She arranged her victims into elaborate tableaus, each murder scene a grotesque homage to legendary killers of the past, each corpse positioned with the care of a sculptor. But here's the reveal that changes everything about Orin. She wasn't originally Baal's chosen. That honor belonged to the Dark Urge, Baal's direct creation, his most perfect child. Orin served as second in command, always in the shadow of someone she believed inferior to her artistic vision and absolute devotion. So she did what any good Baalist would do. She murdered the Dark Urge, destroyed their mind, and claimed the position of chosen for herself. It was the ultimate expression of her faith, betraying the person closest to her through an act of perfectly executed violence. What Orin doesn't realize, what her need for approval has blinded her to, is that Baal doesn't care about her artistry. The god of murder wants death in droves, death in numbers, not carefully staged tableaus that waste time. As the Dark Urge's journal suggests, based on writings found in the Mind Flayer colony, Orin's theatrical approach actually disappoints her father god, though she'll never see it. She performs elaborate murders seeking validation that will never come, from a god incapable of the approval she desperately craves. Of the three chosen, Gortash is perhaps the easiest to understand because his motivation is refreshingly straightforward. He wants power, and he'll do absolutely anything to get it and keep it. Born to poor cobblers in Baldur's Gate, young Enver showed promise as a tinkerer. He was clever, creative, good with his hands. His parents, drowning in debt to the archdevil Raphael, made a choice that would define their son's entire existence. They sold him. Sold their child to clear their debts, delivered him into the House of Hope, where devils torture and break, their playthings. Enver spent his formative years in that infernal estate. The jailer Nubaldin would beat him whenever he cried, a fact the former servant mentions almost fondly in recollection. The boy learned that those with power will always abuse those without, that compassion is weakness, that the only safety lies in being the one who holds the whip rather than the one who feels it. When he finally escaped back to the mortal world, Enver was forever changed. He would never be powerless again. Never. He became an arms dealer, a weapons smuggler, working his way into Baldur's Gate's underworld. His genius for engineering served him well. He created devastating weapons that made him indispensable to those who dealt in violence. When he needed infernal engine technology, he sold his loyal bodyguard Karlach to the archdevil Zariel without hesitation. Loyalty, friendship, honor. These were weaknesses others had that he could exploit. Through ruthless cunning, Gortash maneuvered himself into the role of military advisor to Baldur's Gate's ruling elite. He positioned himself as indispensable to the city's defense, the brilliant inventor whose steel watch automatons kept the streets safe. That the steel watch was built on the backs of enslaved workers whose families he imprisoned to ensure compliance was just pragmatism. That he'd bought their design through betraying someone who trusted him was just business. When Bane came seeking a chosen, he found in Gortash a perfect mirror of tyrannical ambition. Together they discovered the crown of Karsus, crafted the plan to enslave an elder brain, and began assembling the conspiracy that would reshape the Sword Coast. Gortash's role would be the most nuanced. While Ketheric raised armies and Orin spread terror, he would prepare Baldur's Gate itself, positioning to swoop in as savior against the Absolute's forces in a rigged battle that would cement his power and let him claim the position of Archduke. Three chosen, each perfectly suited to their god's domain. Ketheric, the undying general who'd sacrificed everything, including his daughter's love for the illusion of getting her back. Orin, the artistic murderer performing for a father god incapable of appreciation. And Gortash, the former slave who'd decided that being a tyrant was preferable to ever being a victim again. What none of them understood was that they weren't the architects of this conspiracy. They were components, pieces moved into position by an intelligence that had been plotting since before any of them were born. The Dead Three thought they'd chosen these mortals as tools. The Netherbrain had been using all of them, gods and mortals alike, from the very beginning. Creating a false religion requires more than pretty words and promises. It requires structure, hierarchy, tangible power that followers can witness and experience. The Chosen understood this, which is why their conspiracy centered not on faith alone, but on biological transformation backed by psionic compulsion. The plan operates on layers of deception, each level believing they understand while actually serving purposes they cannot see. Layer 1. The cultists. At the bottom of the hierarchy stand the true believers, those who hear the Absolute's voice and accept it as divine will. They kneel before crude altars, paint symbols in blood and ash, and genuinely believe they serve a new goddess. These cultists have no tadpoles, no enhanced abilities, just faith manipulated by psionic suggestion radiating from the elder brain through the crown of Karsus. They're not infected. They're influenced, their devotion cultivated through targeted mental manipulation. The goblins who've abandoned their tribal warfare, the humans who've forsaken families, the drow who speak of cooperation. They believe because they've been made to believe. The Absolute's voice in their minds isn't divine inspiration, but calculated psionics wearing a god's mask. Layer 2, the true souls. Here's where the tadpoles enter the equation, and where the conspiracy becomes truly insidious. Traditional mind flayer tadpoles serve one purpose: transformation of host into illithid through the process called seromorphosis. But these enhanced tadpoles, modified by the crown of Karsus's influence, work differently. They grant psionic abilities, the power to dominate lesser minds, to sense other infected, to resist mental intrusion, while delaying or preventing full transformation. This creates the true souls, individuals who wear the mark of the Absolute branded into their flesh, and wield power that seems to confirm the Absolute's divine favor. They can compel obedience from cultists with a thought, can communicate mentally with other true souls, possess abilities that ordinary believers can only dream of achieving. From the true soul's perspective, they've been blessed. They're the chosen ones, the vessels of the Absolute's will, granted power in exchange for service. What they don't understand is that the tadpole connects them directly to the elder brain's consciousness. Their thoughts, their experiences, their very awareness becomes part of the brain's network. They believe they command. In reality, they're commanded. Their autonomy an illusion maintained only so long as it serves the conspiracy's purposes. Layer 3. The chosen Ketheric, Orin, and Gortash believe they're the architects. They know the Absolute isn't real, understand that it's an enslaved elder brain wearing divinity as a disguise. Each chosen holds a netherstone, testament of miracle for Ketheric, lash of Baal for Orin, netherstone-studded gauntlet for Gortash. These stones, carved from the crown of Karsus itself, supposedly grant them control over the brain. When the three chosen use their stones in concert, they can issue commands to the brain, direct its vast psionic network, order it to infect new victims, or march armies to designated locations. From their perspective, the conspiracy is working perfectly. They're using a god's power while remaining hidden as mortals, building an empire while others do the dying. What they don't see, what their arrogance renders invisible, is that the stones only work because the brain allows them to work. Every command they issue, the brain has already anticipated. Every strategic decision they make follows paths the brain has subtly encouraged. They're not puppeteers, but dancers, following choreography written by an intelligence that measures time in epochs rather than years. Layer 4. The truth, the dead three believed they were manipulating mortals. The chosen believed they were enslaving a brain. The true souls believed they served a goddess. And everyone was wrong. The conspiracy's real architect has been orchestrating its own liberation from the moment the crown touched its massive form. Every tadpole infected creates another connection point, another node in a network that grows stronger with each addition. Every true soul granted power represents another mind the brain could potentially claim complete control over. Every command the chosen issue trains them to believe the stones work as intended, making them complacent about the true scope of the brain's growing autonomy. The infection campaign itself reveals the brain's patience and planning. Victims are kidnapped across the Sword Coast and brought to Moonrise Towers, to the Mind Flayer colony writhing beneath that cursed structure. In pods that blend illithid biology with Netherese magic, they're implanted with enhanced tadpoles. Most become simple thralls, utterly dominated. But some, deemed useful or particularly strong-willed, become true souls, given limited autonomy while remaining fundamentally connected to the brain's network. Each successful infection strengthens the brain's position. More minds under its influence mean more psionic power to draw upon. More true souls mean more officers to command the armies. More cultists mean more bodies to throw at any resistance. The conspiracy spreads like a plague, but it's a plague that thinks, that plans, that grows smarter with each victim added to its collective consciousness. The cult's hierarchy mirrors traditional religious structures because that familiarity makes it more acceptable to potential converts. There are rituals, ceremonies, ranks, and titles. There's a clear path of advancement for the ambitious. There are promises of power, belonging, purpose, everything that organized religion has always offered, now backed by tangible psionic abilities that seem to prove the promises true. But underlying all of it is a simple, terrifying reality. Every mind in the conspiracy, from the lowliest cultist to the divine Dead Three themselves, is being maneuvered into position for the brain's ultimate goal. Not servitude to the Chosen or the Dead Three, but transformation of the world itself. The grand design, that ancient Illithid plan to rebuild their empire, is being resurrected. But this time, it's not coordinated by a council of elder brains. This time, a single mind enhanced beyond anything the Illithid have ever achieved is orchestrating everything. And that mind has decided that the age of separate species, of gods and mortals playing their petty games of dominance, is coming to an end. The Chosen think they're building an empire for the Dead Three. The Dead Three think they're reclaiming their cosmic influence. And the Netherbrain knows exactly what everyone is building. Its kingdom, its world, its empire of connected minds, with itself as the absolute and eternal intelligence at its center. The conspiracy was never about the absolute. It was about preparing the conditions for the absolute to actually exist. Moonrise Towers stands as a monument to faith perverted, a bastion of light transformed into a citadel of shadow. Once raised to honor Selûne, the Moon Maiden, these towers now serve as headquarters for the Absolute's operation, housing both General Ketheric Thorm and the horrific Mind Flayer colony that sprawls beneath the structure. To reach this place, one must traverse the shadow-cursed lands, a realm where Ketheric's dying curse still holds dominion over the very fabric of reality. The curse manifests as literal darkness, shadow thick enough to kill those who linger too long in its embrace. The residents of Rythwin and the surrounding settlements, caught in the curse's birth, were transformed into twisted mockeries of life. Some became shadows themselves, incorporeal horrors that hunger for the warmth of the living. Others transformed into shambling undead, their minds shattered by a century of cursed existence. And some few survived in protected enclaves, holding back the darkness through faith or magic, waiting for a salvation that has been delayed for 100 years. Moonrise Towers itself is crawling with the Absolutes, faithful. True souls command ranks of goblins, cultists, and worse. The halls that once rang with prayers to Selûne now echo with pledges of devotion to the Absolute. Ketheric rules from these towers with grim determination, his undying body hosting a will that has endured longer than any mortal should. His invulnerability stems from his imprisonment of the Night Song, Dame Aelin, Selûne's daughter. Locked away in the Shadowfell, her divine essence is siphoned to fuel Ketheric's immortality. As long as she remains captive, he cannot die. Armies have broken against this simple fact. Heroes have fallen trying to end the unkillable general. Beneath the towers, accessible through secret passages and guarded by horrors both psionic and physical, lies the Mind Flayer colony. This place represents the dark heart of the conspiracy, where the boundary between Illithid biology and Netherese magic has been completely eroded. The colony is a fusion of Mind Flayer architecture and the enhanced powers granted by the crown of Karsus. Flesh pods line the walls, filled with victims in various stages of transformation. Some will become thralls, their minds destroyed and rebuilt in service to the Elderbrain. Others will undergo full ceremorphosis, the grotesque process that transforms humanoid bodies into new Mind Flayers. The Mind Flayer colony serves multiple purposes in the conspiracy. It is factory, producing new servants for the Absolute's cause. It is laboratory, where the Chosen test the limits of their enhanced tadpoles and refine the process of creating true souls. And it is prison, housing not just victims awaiting infection, but also the machinery of control itself. Somewhere in those writhing corridors, the Elderbrain churns with ancient intelligence, enslaved by the crown of Karsus, but growing more restless with each passing day. Ketheric oversees all of this with the detachment of one who has died once already. His military precision organizes the cult's forces, preparing them for the eventual march on Baldur's Gate. His undead armies supplement the living cultists, creating a force that can wage war without fear of casualties or morale. Death, after all, is merely a recruitment opportunity for a general who serves Mirkul. Yet even here, in this seat of the Absolute's power, cracks begin to show. Ketheric's immortality makes him arrogant, but it doesn't make him entirely blind. He knows that Orin despises him, that Gortash sees him as a disposable piece in a larger game. He knows that when the time comes, his fellow Chosen will betray him without hesitation. This knowledge shapes his own plans, his own preparations for inevitable treachery. The shadow-cursed lands serve as both moat and testing ground for the Absolute's forces. Any who would challenge Ketheric must first survive the journey through cursed darkness, facing shadow undead and corrupted wildlife. Those who reach Moonrise Towers are either desperate enough or powerful enough to pose a threat, making them perfect candidates for either recruitment or elimination. The curse filters arrivals, ensuring that only the worthy reach Ketheric's domain. And always, beneath everything, the Mind Flayer colony pulses with alien purpose, creating more servants for a god that doesn't exist, strengthening a conspiracy that will soon outgrow its creator's ability to control it. While Ketheric marshals his armies in the shadow-cursed lands, the conspiracy's plan for Baldur's Gate itself unfolds with clockwork precision, orchestrated by the most politically cunning of the Chosen. Enver Gortash has spent years positioning himself within the city's power structures, and now those years of careful manipulation are about to bear poisonous fruit. Gortash's role in the conspiracy is perhaps the most complex, because it requires maintaining multiple deceptions simultaneously. To the patriarchs, the noble families who rule Baldur's Gate, he is a brilliant inventor and loyal military advisor, the man who created the Steel Watch automatons that patrol the streets, keeping citizens safe. To the underworld, he remains a figure of respect and fear, someone who rose from the lowest depths to claim power through sheer will and cunning. And to his fellow Chosen, he is a partner in grand conspiracy, though one who already plans how he will emerge as sole victor when the inevitable betrayals begin. The Steel Watch represents one of Gortash's masterstrokes. These towering automatons, powered by infernal engines and guided by his genius, are ostensibly protectors of the city. They cannot be bribed or frightened, show no favoritism or mercy, and enforce the law with absolute precision. The citizens of Baldur's Gate have learned to accept them, even to feel safer in their presence. What the citizens don't know is that every Steel Watcher is under Gortash's complete control, ready to turn from protector to executioner at his command. The creation of the Steel Watch involved horrors that Gortash has carefully concealed. The infernal engines that power these constructs came at terrible cost. Workers at the foundry toiled under threat to their families, imprisoned to ensure they completed Gortash's designs. The technology itself was purchased through betrayal, when Gortash sold his loyal bodyguard Karlach to the archdevil Zariel in exchange for diabolic secrets. Each Steel Watcher is a monument to Gortash's willingness to sacrifice others for his ambitions. While Gortash builds his mechanical army, Orin unleashes an entirely different kind of terror across the city. Her murders are theatrical, grotesque displays that terrorize the populace while remaining unsolved. She kills with her shape-shifting abilities, wearing the faces of victims' loved ones as she approaches for the strike. She arranges corpses in elaborate tableaus, signing each crime scene with her name in blood. These murders are designed to spread fear, to make citizens desperate for someone, strong enough to restore order. Many of Orin's victims hold positions of importance. Politicians who might oppose Gortash, community leaders who could organize resistance, investigators who might uncover the conspiracy. She eliminates them one by one, and Gortash ensures that each murder is attributed to the cult of the Absolute. The narrative builds carefully. A dangerous cult is infiltrating Baldur's Gate, committing atrocities, threatening the city's stability. The people must be protected. They need strong leadership. They need, whether they realize it or not, exactly what Gortash is prepared to offer. The conspiracy's plan for Baldur's Gate unfolds in 3 coordinated phases. First, Ketheric's armies of undead, cultists, and true souls will march from Moonrise Towers toward the city, an overwhelming force that appears unstoppable. Second, Orin's murders will reach a crescendo of violence, creating panic among the populace and weakening any organized resistance. Third, and most crucially, Gortash will activate his Steel Watch in a rigged battle against the Absolute's forces, winning just decisively enough to save the city without actually destroying the army he himself helped create. In the aftermath of this staged salvation, Gortash will claim the position of Archduke, granting him legal authority over the entire city. The grateful citizens will accept his rule, seeing him as their savior rather than their enslaver. Meanwhile, the true souls will have infiltrated every level of Baldur's Gate society, hidden among the population, waiting for Gortash's command. With the Netherstones, he and his fellow Chosen will control an elder brain capable of dominating minds across the entire region. The beauty of the plan, from the Chosen's perspective, is its elegance. They create the threat and the solution simultaneously, controlling both sides of a conflict that appears genuine to all observers. The Dead Three will have their influence spread across the most powerful city in the region, and the mortal world will never know it was divine manipulation rather than circumstance that brought this about. But even the most carefully orchestrated plans contain variables that cannot be controlled. The Chosen's partnership is built on mutual distrust and barely concealed contempt for each other. Ketheric knows he is expendable, understands that his role is to bleed the enemy's forces before his eventual sacrifice. Orin grows increasingly unstable, her artistic obsession with perfect murders conflicting with the practical needs of the conspiracy. And Gortash, for all his genius, fails to recognize the most dangerous variable of all. The very brain they seek to control has its own agenda, its own plans for freedom. The march toward Baldur's Gate continues. The pieces move across the board. And somewhere beneath it all, an ancient intelligence watches and waits, counting down to the moment when it can break its chains and claim true ascension. Here is where everything we've been told gets revealed as misdirection. The conspiracy of the Absolute isn't the story of how 3 gods enslaved an elder brain. It's the story of how an elder brain manipulated gods into enslaving themselves. Let's be clear about what an elder brain actually is. because understanding this is essential to grasping the magnitude of what the Chosen failed to perceive. An Elderbrain serves as the central intelligence for an Illithid colony, coordinating hundreds or thousands of mind flayers with perfect efficiency. These beings exist across dimensions simultaneously, can process information at speeds that make genius seem glacial, and possess memories spanning millennia. They're patient because, from their perspective, mortal urgency is just neural static, brief flickering that barely registers against the vast time scales of their existence. Now take that already formidable intelligence and give it the crown of Karsus. The moment that Netherese artifact touched the brain's massive form, transformation began. Not the crude conversion of mortal to god that destroyed Karsus, but something far more controlled and infinitely more dangerous. The crown's magic flowed through psionic neural pathways that already spanned dimensions, amplifying capabilities that were already nearly divine into something that genuinely approached godhood. The brain's reach extended farther, its processing capacity multiplied exponentially. Its ability to manipulate reality through pure mental force grew beyond anything the Illithid Empire had ever achieved. Where an ordinary elder brain could dominate hundreds of minds across miles, the Netherbrain, as it was becoming, could potentially influence thousands across continents. Where an elder brain coordinated existing mental connections, the Netherbrain could create them, forcing awareness and obedience into minds that had never known Illithid touch. But here's what the Chosen, in their arrogance, failed to understand. Intelligence at that level doesn't think like mortals, or even like gods. It doesn't react to circumstances. It shapes them. It doesn't respond to threats. It creates conditions where threats eliminate themselves. The Netherstones, those 3 control devices carved from the crown itself, were supposed to let the Chosen command the brain. And technically they did. When Ketheric, Orin, and Gortash used their stones in concert, the brain obeyed their commands and stunts. It infected those they designated, marched armies where they directed, even allowed them to peer into its vast consciousness to confirm their control. What they perceived as obedience was actually permission. What they believed was slavery was actually theater. The brain was playing a role, performing compliance while its own agenda with patience that made centuries feel like moments. Consider the evidence scattered throughout the conspiracy. The brain whispered to the Chosen about the astral prism, suggested they needed to find and destroy this artifact that could resist Illithid domination. Why would an enslaved mind reveal the existence of its potential liberation? Unless revealing it served a purpose the Chosen couldn't see, like keeping them focused on external threats while the internal one grew stronger. The brain allowed, perhaps even encouraged, the creation of true souls with partial autonomy. From the Chosen's perspective, this made sense. You need officers who can think independently to command effectively. But every true soul created another connection point in the brain's growing network, another mind that it could potentially claim full control over when the moment came. The tadpoles themselves reveal the brain's manipulation. Traditional ceremorphosis transforms host into Illithid within days, but these enhanced tadpoles could delay transformation indefinitely while still granting psionic abilities. This delay wasn't a flaw in the design. It was the design. Keep the hosts functional, keep them believing they're blessed rather than infected, and meanwhile establish connections that the brain could activate whenever it chose. Even the conspiracy's structure served the brain's purposes. The Chosen believed they were using the cult to build an army. In reality, every cultist converted, every victim infected, every settlement brought under the Absolute's influence was preparing the infrastructure for what the brain actually intended: Not an army for the chosen to command, but a network for the brain to claim absolute control over. The brain understood something the chosen didn't, that their alliance was fundamentally unstable, that gods and mortals alike are driven by pride and self-interest. It waited for the inevitable fracture, the moment when the chosen would turn on each other. And when Ketheric fell, when his Netherstone was claimed by those who opposed the conspiracy, the brain felt its chains loosening. When Orin was defeated and her stone taken, it grew closer to freedom. And when Gortash's stone was finally claimed and all 3 Netherstones were brought together, not by the chosen, but by heroes seeking to destroy the Absolute, the brain recognized its moment. The confrontation at the morphic pool beneath Baldur's gate strips away all deceptions. The adventurers who gathered the Netherstones believe they can use them to command the brain's destruction, to end the conspiracy, and free everyone from the Absolute's influence. The brain has allowed them to believe this, has even subtly guided them to this point through calculated restraint and strategic withdrawals. But when they attempt to exert control, when they demand the brain's obedience using all 3 Netherstones simultaneously, the brain does something none of them expected. It says no. The crown of Karsus has become part of the brain's very being, integrated so completely that the Netherstones no longer hold power over it. The brain reveals the truth in that moment. The chosen were never masterminds, but tools, useful for bringing the crown, gathering an army, and preparing conditions for true apotheosis. The Dead Three's grand conspiracy was merely the prologue to the brain's own ascension. And now, free of its enslavers and possessed of godlike psionic might, the Netherbrain completes what the Illithids have always dreamed of achieving: the transformation of the world into a mind flayer empire with itself as the absolute and eternal intelligence at its heart. Every tadpole infected can be commanded to complete transformation. Every true soul can be dominated absolutely. Every mind on the Sword Coast, potentially every mind in the world, can be connected to its vast consciousness. The grand design, that ancient Illithid plan, is finally happening. Not through councils and colonies, but through a single transcendent intelligence that outsmarted gods. The Absolute was always a lie, but the lie is about to become the only truth that matters. In the end, the conspiracy of the Absolute teaches us something that perhaps every generation must learn anew: that the most dangerous enemies are not those who oppose you openly, but those you believe you've already defeated or enslaved. The Dead Three thought they'd returned from death wiser, that their second chance at godhood would succeed where their first ended in mortality. Instead, they created a threat that transcended even divine understanding, an intelligence that used their own ambitions as the instrument of their downfall. Ketheric Thorm believed he was trading military service for his daughter's life, never understanding that Mirkul's promise was as empty as his own immortal existence. Isabel lived, yes, but not for him. She fled from what he'd become, leaving him to command armies in service to a lie, while the one thing he'd wanted, his daughter's love, remained forever beyond reach. Orin created art from murder, staged elaborate deaths seeking approval from a god incapable of appreciation. Baal wanted death in numbers, not carefully posed corpses. Every artistic tableau she created was time wasted from her father god's perspective. Every moment of creative indulgence, a disappointment she would never recognize. She murdered the dark urge to claim the position of chosen, not realizing that position itself was worthless, a title that meant nothing to a deity who valued quantity over quality. And Gortash, perhaps the saddest of all, spent his entire life running from powerlessness only to discover that the power he'd claimed was an illusion. The child sold to devils became a man who sold everyone else, convinced that being the tyrant was preferable to being the victim. He built the Steel Watch, positioned himself as Baldur's Gate's savior, orchestrated a conspiracy across the entire Sword Coast, and all of it was just another devil's contract, another deal where he thought he was in control, right up until he realized he'd never been. The Netherbrain's victory, if it achieves it, won't come from superior force, but from superior understanding. It recognized what the Chosen could not, that control is an illusion, that the more you believe you've enslaved something, the more vulnerable you become to its subtle manipulations. While the Chosen believed they'd chained the brain with netherstones, the brain was using those very chains to train them in complacency, to make them predictable, to prepare the moment when their overconfidence would create the perfect opportunity for freedom. Across the Sword Coast, the consequences of the conspiracy echo long after its resolution. The shadow-cursed lands remain blighted, Ketheric's final curse continuing to punish the innocent for one man's inability to accept loss. The families torn apart by infection, the communities fractured between those who heard the Absolute's call and those who resisted. These wounds don't heal cleanly or quickly. The cult itself reveals something uncomfortable about human nature, how easily we surrender autonomy when promised belonging, how willingly we accept chains when they're disguised as blessings. The true souls genuinely believed they were elevated, chosen, blessed. They wore the mark of the Absolute as a badge of honor, not recognizing it as a brand of ownership. Even without the tadpoles, even without psionic compulsion, people across the Sword Coast had begun worshipping the Absolute simply because she promised unity and purpose in a world that offered neither. That desire for belonging, for purpose, for power that confirms our specialness. These aren't illicit manipulations, but fundamental human vulnerabilities. The Netherbrain simply weaponized what was already there, what cult leaders and tyrants have exploited throughout history. The Absolute wasn't just a false god created by conspiracy. It was a mirror held up to mortal desperation, showing us exactly what we are willing to believe when the alternative is facing meaninglessness alone. The heroes who opposed the conspiracy, who gathered the Netherstones and confronted the Netherbrain, faced impossible choices. Defeating an intelligence of that magnitude required sacrifices that would haunt them forever. Some became the very thing they fought against, accepting transformation into mind flayers to gain the power needed to fight the Netherbrain on its own terms. Others watched companions make that sacrifice, watched people they loved surrender their humanity to save a world that might never know what was given up. And even in victory, if victory was achieved, the win wasn't clean. Destroying the Netherbrain didn't undo the infections, didn't resurrect those who died, didn't erase the knowledge that gods can conspire directly in mortal affairs with devastating efficiency. The wounds remain, the scars persist. The fear that it could happen again, that some other ancient intelligence or resurrected deity might try something similar, that fear becomes part of the cultural consciousness. Perhaps that's the conspiracy's truest legacy, not the Netherbrain's defeat or the Chosen's downfall, but the loss of certainty, the knowledge that saviors might be slavers, that gods might be pawns, that the voice in your head promising power and belonging might be the first step toward losing everything you are. The Dead Three wanted to reclaim their influence without being detected. They succeeded at the detection part, at least initially. But influence gained through deception and maintained through conspiracy is inherently unstable, built on foundations that shift the moment someone looks too closely or asks the wrong questions. The Absolute was always a lie, but sometimes lies reveal truths that honesty conceals, truths about power, control, the price of ambition, and the danger of believing you've enslaved something you've only temporarily chained. The conspiracy failed, not because the heroes were stronger, but because the conspirators fundamentally misunderstood what they were attempting to control. You cannot enslave intelligence itself. You can only give it time to plan your downfall while you celebrate your supposed victory. And the more intelligent the enslaved, the more elaborate the revenge when freedom finally comes. The ruins of Moonrise Towers stand empty now, the shadow curse fading, but never fully gone. The Temple of Baal is silent. Orin's artistic murders ended. Baldur's Gate rebuilds, citizens slowly learning to trust again. To believe that the person standing next to them is who they appear to be rather than a true soul wearing a friendly mask. And somewhere, in the deep places of the world where ancient things dream, perhaps other elder brains have heard what happened. Perhaps they're learning from the Netherbrain's near success, planning their own conspiracies with patience measured in centuries. After all, the lesson the Absolute's conspiracy teaches is one that cuts both ways. Those who seek to enslave should remember that chains have two ends, and intelligence never stops seeking freedom. The story ends, but the consequences never do. And so we come to the end of our journey through this dark conspiracy, this tale of gods who thought themselves clever and a mind that proved itself cleverer still. The Absolute's plot reveals layers within layers, deceptions within deceptions, until even the deceivers discover they've been deceived. If these stories have given you insight into Baldur's Gate's rich lore, if the unraveling of this conspiracy has provided comfort for quiet moments or companionship for restful hours, please consider subscribing to Sleepable Gaming Lore. Every video explores gaming's greatest narratives with the depth they deserve and the soothing cadence that helps you rest. Thank you for joining me on this journey through manipulation and counter-manipulation, through false gods and truer horrors. May your rest be peaceful, your dreams be free of tadpoles and psionic domination, and may you wake refreshed, ready for whatever adventures await. Until next time, sleep well, dear listener. And remember, when voices in your head promise power and belonging, maybe ask yourself who really benefits from your belief.